It's a pleasure and honor to have with us Professor James Glazier from our own Indiana, but Indiana University, to share with us um, living many histories. Without further ado, James, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'd say I'm an accidental biological physicist, and I normally tell this story in a scientific way, talking about development, homeostasis, disease, self-organization. But I'm going to talk about myself. You asked us to talk about our journeys. I'm going to do that. The reality was very accidental, and I really mean accidental. I bounced around a lot. I was lucky, and we can discuss what that means. And I have to say I'm easily distracted and I'm interested in everything and involves a lot of countries and a lot of places. Going back to the beginning, I spent my childhood between Italy and the United States. My father taught in Italy a lot. I developed a love of art, which is interested in Etruscan archaeology, somehow a fascination with Japan, which will come back later. I was pretty good at mathematics and science. I also always knew that I was not one of the smart people. I was a social outsider, and I knew very early that I was gay. And I'm going to talk about that a lot because my sexuality was really critical to everything that happened in my life. Uh, I think because of that, I identified with underdogs, losers, forgotten, overlooked. And scientifically and intellectually, I liked finding hidden connections and patterns, alternative explanations, challenging accepted stories. And that's really been the theme of my whole career. Came back to the United States. I refused to dissect a frog in high school, in freshman high school class. So they said, oh, you have to take physics. So I wound up taking advanced physics classes, ran out of physics classes at the high school. They said, why don't you go to Harvard and take classes there? So actually, when I was still a high school student, I started taking classes at Harvard. Built some early personal computers back in the days when you had to enter things in octal code. And again, I always knew there were people who were smarter than I was. And I hid my sexuality, and that again was an issue. Went to Harvard, went through in 3.5 years. Teaching was excellent, but they really did not have any interest in getting people involved in research as undergrads. It was purely coursework. We were not encouraged to get involved in research. We weren't involved in lectures, science. Loved classical mechanics, loved advanced lab, great teachers. Spent a summer at Brookhaven, which told me I was not interested in particle physics, which was the only thing that that department really cared about in those days. Double major in physics and mathematics. Loved analysis, fractals, dynamical systems. I attended exactly 2 seminars, entire time at Harvard, both of which were in dynamical systems and chaos. Loved that. And then I did a summer internship at Tektronix, the device company in those days. And they turned me loose, gave me enormous opportunity to do device fabrication. And I learned about inkjets and chaos and built devices, microfluidic devices in those days. And so that had me decide I really wanted to work in chaos and in fluid dynamics. No biology. So I was still, I wouldn't dissect that frog. I didn't want to get anywhere near biology. At Harvard, I was interested in everything. I also completed a degree in art history, which I didn't take. I was very ambivalent about this. Staged a Baroque opera. I actually applied to PhD programs and was admitted in both physics and archaeology. And it wasn't just an intellectual question because the atmosphere at Harvard in physics was exceedingly homophobic. They were denigrated to anybody who was gay. They were extremely hostile to people who were gay. And so I had to hide myself. And so choosing between physics and archaeology really became a choice about expressing my sexuality or not. And in the end, I decided to go to the University of Chicago in physics instead of archaeology. I was admitted in both. And I'm not sure I made the right decision, actually. Chicago, I worked with Albert Liebscher, one of the great scientists in fluid dynamics. He also had a tremendous interest in history, in forgotten science. And a lot of his career was investigating 19th century science. Worked in hydrodynamics, published a series of papers in hydrodynamics. But Albert always said I didn't have passionate commitment. I couldn't tell him why. I couldn't tell him that I was not passionate and committed because I was hiding who I was sexually. On the other hand, I got to study with Leo Kadanoff, Idemar Prokacha, Boris Yeltsin, Pierre de Gennes. It's tremendous intellectual opportunity. Also wrote opera reviews. There was a journal club on phones with Joel Stamm and Steve Gross. It turned into my PhD thesis. Albert gave me complete freedom to do whatever I wanted, which was tremendous. Read Darcy Thompson's On Growth and Form, which makes analogies between minimal surfaces and foams and biology. That was my first interest in biology. Heard a talk by Gary Grest on modeling foams. Started collaborating with them at Exxon. Heard a seminar by Kaneko Sensei from Tokyo on neural self-organization and became fascinated by collective phenomena in neuroscience. I wanted to go to Japan. I heard a talk by Koji Sawada on hybrid regeneration. Decided to go to Japan as a postdoc. I was intimidated, I have to say, that people told me I'd never be able to come back to the US if I went to Japan and never get a job. And I listened to them. Big mistake. I took a postdoc in the US in fluid dynamics. It was a disaster. I had a very abusive advisor. And it did give me time to read textbooks in biology. I went through stacks of molecular biology of the cell, marked all the things that I thought were unclear, unexplored, interesting. Also started riding horses. Also started a documentary on it. Almost left science after that. It was really a terrible experience. But I was rescued. There's some very generous people. David Tank taught me neuroscience experimental techniques. Mark Skolnick, great geneticist, gave me a visiting position at University of Utah. Dennis Weir, Trinity College, foam expert, gave me a visiting position at Trinity College, Dublin. Took the MBL summer course. Somebody else was talking about taking courses at MBL. It's the only bio course I've ever had in my life. We've done biology for 30-some years. That's the only bio course I ever had. Tremendous opportunity. Fascination with self-organization and emergence. Went to Japan after all, laboratory of Koji Sawada. Great, great man, not so well known in the United States. In Japan, he's trained hundreds of people who are the leaders in all sciences. Tremendous group. Everything so interdisciplinary, everything from hard neuroscience, wet neuroscience, neural networks, chaos theory, experimental work in cracks, integrated circuit fabrication. Unbelievably creative place. Started working with Francois Grenier, a multicellular organization. Published using the modeling methodology that we extended from foams. Our first paper on cell sorting, which is probably the main contribution to biological physics. It's still the basis of work done by hundreds of groups worldwide today. Came back to the United States in 1993, didn't want to come back. Flew to Chicago, took the train from Chicago to South Bend to go to Notre Dame. Train crashed, everybody else died. I was the only person who survived. Well, the reason I survived, somebody 5 minutes before the crash said, "Could you change seats?" Just happened. Worked on fractally coupled neural networks. It's too early. No one is interested in fractal networks in those days. Foam experiments using X-ray synchrotrons, MRI. Lots of developmental biology experiments and models. Taught dynamical systems, created by physics track. Bought a riding stable, started camp in Mongolia on horseback. Great students at Notre Dame. Really outstanding students. Set up a biocomplexity center, got us money. But it was a terrible place to be gay. If I had come out before my tenure, I would have been fired. Even after tenure, if they'd known that I was gay, I would have had my salary cut and I would have been persecuted. So, as soon as I could, I left. I moved to Indiana University in 2001. Came out, found a partner, started living. I was hired to create a biological physics track at IU. I did that. We created a physics PhD track, courses, exams, everything. Did a lot of faculty hiring because I was given a lot of freedom to do that. Worked a lot in microfluidics, biosensors. Actually started a biosensor company, which unfortunately went out of business after the 2008 meltdown. People kept bringing me wonderful biological problems. in self-organization at the tissue level. Worked in development, angiogenesis, segmentation, gastrulation, problems with homeostasis, tissue maintenance, toxicology. Worked extensively with Tom Bootson at the EPA for years and years. Many people have gone on from that collaboration to be leaders at NIH and elsewhere. It was a tremendous opportunity to work with him, privilege. Worked on a lot of developmental diseases, age-related macular degeneration, polycystic kidney disease, more recently viral infection. Got more and more involved in computation. I did a lot of primarily experimental earlier on. Served as chair of DBio, 4-year rotation. Loved doing that, set up the PhD prize while I was chair. That was my big thing to do for that, for the Division of Biological Physics. And a few years ago, when IU decided to create an engineering program, I jumped out of physics to set up the bioengineering component of their new program, Intelligent Systems Engineering, which is where I've been ever since. And these days, primarily, I'm working in the area of medical digital twins. So I hope that maybe gives you a flavor for some of my personality, who I am, how I got there. And I can't really talk about the science. I've worked in so many different problems, it's almost hard to come up with a single theme. But emergence and undersolved problems, under-resourced problems, I think, are a focus of mine. And connecting people. Interdisciplinarity to me is critical. Communication between fields is absolutely critical. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, James, for such an inspiring talk. On behalf of the audience, I'm clapping. And I am taking a question from the audience first. They want to know what they can do to support people who are in their early career stages, like you were in the story you told us, to be their whole selves at work in this day and age.
Well, I don't think I ever identified my primary identity wasn't being gay. I was a person who happened to be gay. What happened was that because the society didn't accept that, I had to hide it. And because I had to hide it, then it became an issue. And so I think the thing that we have to do, we try to do, is to accept people as they are, and maybe not ask questions if they don't want to. I've had many gay students. Often didn't know they were gay when they came to work for me. I've had transsexual students, and to me, I really try to see people as people, and to listen to people as people. And perhaps because my interests are varied, I always try to find some point of contact with people. That may be science, it may not be. And so I think that issue of respect is something we don't have much of. I hope it's easier for people who are gay now than it was when I was a student. I hope that will stay that way. I'm concerned about that. But I do think that listening is probably the most important thing we could do.
Wow, thank you. I want to follow up with a question about taking the winding road, taking left turns, questioning after a very successful career in biological physics if archaeology, was it? Might have been might have been the preferable route. So I want to ask you how you managed to have such an interesting winding road trajectory in academia, which is very good about streamlining people into paths of high efficiency and low risks. So how did you manage?
Well, as I say, a lot of it's accident. And that's why I talked about things like the train crash. These things happen. We all have these kinds of experiences. I think we're often not aware of how many choice points we have, right? In some kinds of chaos, you have these choice points where you either go to the left or to the right. And often we're aware of those things happening. Sometimes we're not. And I think again, openness to new experience is critical. And in some ways, I was very insecure. I was very afraid of losing things. I held on to too much. All sorts of projects I never finished because I wouldn't quite let them go. So in that sense, I probably would have been a lot more successful if I'd focused on one thing, actually. On the other hand, my values were serendipity, curiosity, diversity, copiousness. And so it was such a treat. I felt like a kid in a candy shop. Wow, somebody would come to me and tell me about polycystic kidney disease. How do we understand the mechanism? Somebody would come to me and talk to me about choroidal neovascularization. Wow, nobody knows how it works. We can't develop treatments for this disease because we don't understand the mechanisms. We don't really understand how sepsis works. And so I was really lucky in the sense that people were always coming to me with these great problems in biological organization. A lot of them I tried and I didn't get anywhere. But I think the main thing was to be open. I did a lot. These days I do a lot of online teaching. We have our online CompuCell course every summer. We have students from India, from Africa, from Europe, from South America who join virtually. And we have a hackathon. And I sit with them and I try to help them. What is the biological problem we want to solve? How do we think about it? How do we conceptualize it? And some of them, I had a group of Indian students one summer who went off to Singapore and started a company based on what they did in those 3-day hackathon. I don't know how it went after that, but there's so much there in biology that we don't understand. I work at the cell and tissue level mostly, but you go into the cell and you look at molecular organization. There's so much we don't understand. There's no shortage of wonderful problems if we just are open to.
Thank you so much. On that high note, I am closing the recording.